They're
Crystal, I think
multitasking.
you need to take it away.
Okie dokie. I think Frank and Mo ended that conversation. So, okay, so we're gonna do two segments real quick. And I'm gonna try to do them as quickly and efficiently as possible. Um, we will make this, so they can't even see me that far back, but we will make this new updated seller checklist. Tyler, you don't even have this because it's fresh off the press. So this got just a little updated from what I know Tyler and Natanya probably have received from me before. Just a few little updates, but we're gonna walk through the second part from yesterday of explaining those numbers. Remember, I talked about how you explain the value, your price, all that kind of stuff. And then we're gonna get into the seller checklist so you guys can get a feel of like what's the first thing I do down to when I close with these people, get their home listed and all that. So that's kind of what this is. So we'll do it in two different parts. And so to start, I'm going to ask that you take some notes, kind of fast and furious, and then if you have questions later, it doesn't even have to be today, you can always reach out because I'm just going to tell you how I generate these reports instead of me going on doing them. You actually have the documents that I'm telling you how I get them and walk through them, okay? So I'm just gonna go through the documents really quick so you know how to get there, and then I'm gonna act like I'm talking to our seller, Rosie, on explaining those, okay? So here's some documents that I always do once I get a listing contract from, a listing contract, I'm sorry. Once they have given me the email back with the 6 questions, remember, I asked for that. I take that, I print that off. Yes, I'm a paper person at times. I love it, and I don't think I'm gonna get away from it for this purpose because I write on them and it's very useful. So I print their answers out, and then I go and find in my board to see if their property has ever been listed before. So I'm going to that BLC sheet. If you're trying to follow me, the listing sheet. I don't know. I'm sure I don't want to assume all of you may or may not have gone in and pulled off a listing sheet, but if you haven't, you will really soon. But this is the listing sheet. So I went up and looked for the listing sheet from when they sold before or when that house has been sold before, period. And one of the reasons I do that is just to have some background information. Usually it's the people who live there now were the last ones to sell it. And so I like to do that because I'll explain why. But if it's never been on the market before, like you're dealing with the original buyers, whatever, it's okay. There just isn't a listing sheet. You skip that part. The next thing is while I'm in there, I print off their the assessor's tax records, those sheets, and you guys have that. And Rosie's pulling that up. This is what this looks like. You're able to access this from that listing. If there never was a listing, you can just, go on to Realist from my board and type in the address and get it. This is so important. I'm gonna tell you what, because I don't go over this with the client, but I'm gonna tell you some key things of why I do this, some information I get off of that. First of all, it does tell you a little bit about the house square footage and all that. Number one, you want to make sure that you are dealing with the buyer of that home. Don't skip over that and think that that is not. I received grievance ethics, grievance things on the grievance committee where people have come in and trying to sue realtors or different things because that wasn't their name wasn't like it can get really crazy. You are expected, just so you know this, as a licensed realtor, you are expected to have noticed that. Does that make sense? Like you can't say, oh, I didn't even know. The law and anyone else would think you're a professional and you should have done due diligence to know that the person you're dealing with is the person who actually has rights to the house. Okay, just so you guys know that. So that's going to tell you right off the top there who the owners are. And then another piece down in the tax information, the middle section of that first page, it's going to tell you what exemptions are on that home. That will be very important when you go in to enter this into MyBoard. The exemption in the tax information toward the bottom of that box, it says exemption. Yep, tells you what the, and like this one has homestead and mortgage exemptions. It also is going to tell you what the taxes are on the right side of that in that box. I use this, you'll see why I use this and when I use this here shortly. And then we're gonna go to the second, wait a minute, there's something else that I know I use off of this. Is it on this page? Yes, at the very bottom, well, yes, thank you, John. The legal description is there in that tax information. You'll need that when you're entering into MyBoard as well as dotloop to do the listing contract. At the bottom of this page, very bottom, it has lot acres. It tells you how big the lot is. That's important for listing it in MyBoard as well. That's where you get that information. On the second page, did they not put that? Oh, it's actually on the first. Oh, sorry. We did front to back. On the second page, in the middle section there's something that says estimated value. And it gives you like an AVM scoring of about what the value is for that house. That is not something you go, oh, that's the value, I'm going to use it. But it is a good indicator and something to kind of check yourself on. Okay. So I have found these to be very useful and helpful. That estimated value part, like I said, I don't put money on that, but I use it just to kind of check the other, to check against the other things I have found. That is really, that's really about all I use it for going forward on a listing, but there's just good information on there, period. Just a side note, whenever you're in negotiations, I like to always kind of check too to see how much, if I'm working with the buyer, how much the owner owes on the house, to kind of figure out, like, could they even sell this at this price? It gives me some ideas. So that's kind of cool for other purposes, but just know this should be your friend, the assessor's area on this. It's really good. So I have, and I'm a little bit of a neat freak, maybe a lot of a neat freak. So I'm just going to tell you the order, but you totally are not going to get in trouble if you don't keep things in this order. But I have the VLC sheet first for me. And then I have that assessor sheet. So the way I'm talking to you, explaining them is the order that I keep them in. I do print off a BLC sheet, their former BLC sheet, one for me, and then one to give to the seller. Okay, so I actually print off two of those. That assessor sheet does not need to go to the seller. It's just for my packet that I keep with the thinking of selling my email. If I have lost anybody, say something.
No. So the assessor sheet is this side.
Yes.
Okay?
Yep. You got it. Yes, that tax document thing. So the next document we're going to talk about is the agent single line. It's that very first one, Rosie. That is found by when you create a search in MyBoard, you put on all the information you're looking for, it is going to pop up and show you all the homes that came up and that meet that description. When you go to print, this is the agent single line, and you'll hear why I use this and how, but that's what this is. That's the next sheet. And then after that are the actual listing sheets for my comparables, my comps. So these, okay? And we talked about listing sheets already. I'm pulling those off of the agent single line. So they're gonna be homes that I've selected off of the agent single line sheet, okay? And I promise I'm gonna explain it a little bit better when I'm acting like I'm speaking with our seller. So you got the listing sheets for all of my comparables. Also, any homes that are that I'm using that are active, that would be competition for them, okay? If that ever happens nowadays. The next thing are the photos, the interior. Is on it. All of those comps, which are 4, we have 4 of them. I print out the interior photos, and it's called 60. It's like consumer 60 photos, you guys. When you go to print, if you run into a question, just let me know. I'm happy to help you when you go to try to do that. But it's like 60 photos. So it prints all the interior photos. Real quick side note, the reason I'm doing this, remember, I told them the 4 reasons a house will sell. One of them was your realtor you picked. So we explained how great of a hot shot I am yesterday, right? One of them is the condition they keep the house. Well, how do they know what condition they need to keep the house in if we're not looking at the condition of the comps, right? That is why I do interior photos, because that's one of those things. And then the next thing is a quick CMA. Quick CMA. Some people use the big full CMA. That is fine. I don't, and I will never train from that because I did it once and never did it again. I don't like it. But it's not wrong. It's available for a reason. A lot of successful realtors use that. The large CMA is going to have the stuff that I am using and like 10 times more. So it's not like this stuff is not in there. It's way too much information for me. So this is the quick CMA of those same 4 comps, the same 4 interior photos. And now we're clicking, we want a quick CMA when you do that. All coming from Matrix in the same section. And then the very last document is the money. Show me the money. And the way you get this one is on my board. If you go to finance from the home screen and then go to seller estimated net proceeds, then from there, you just plug in just the information that you want that I have show up and click enter and it prints it off like this. It's really cool. I love this thing. So here's those are the documents, and then I'm just going to get right in and start talking to Rosie. Okay. All right, Rosie. So I'm really excited to walk you through. So let's look at your neighborhood and how it's performing and everything. Okay. And so what I'm going to do, this very first page, keep forgetting I don't have to turn it around. I am, so whatever. I really go into character. Okay, so on this first page, if you notice, this is your home that when you bought the house, when you bought it, and you can take a look at this later on, but I just want to use it as a guide so you know how to compare your home to the other comps that have sold in your neighborhood. So I'm going to check. And just a quick side note, now I'll admit I don't do it anymore. I've gotten a little busy, but for you, what I used to do when I first started doing listing appointments, I highlighted. I would show up with my packet, but I would have the areas highlighted that I wanted them to notice, that I want them to compare that to the comps. And then those comps, those areas will be highlighted too. Now I've gotten a little lazy and I just put check marks on them, but I think it's a great idea. And I probably need to go back to doing that, putting the highlights. Okay. So here's your address. Here is, and a quick thing for some of you, like, why would you need to do that? You guys would be amazed at how many people don't know how much square footage their house is, because you don't run around saying we have 2,300 square feet. So you want them to be able to compare. So here's your address here at the top. This just shows the status that your home was sold. DOM here is the days on market. Over here to the left just shows what your house actually sold for versus what it was listed for. These are all across the top. And then coming down here, if you notice, it'll show how many beds, how many bathrooms. It'll show your square footage over here in this box. And then over here, it's just going to show the garage spaces. Now, Rosie, I know you know all this stuff about your house, but this is going to be very useful when I leave here today and leave this information with you for you guys to be able to compare properly with the other homes in your neighborhood. And I stressed that, you guys, a couple different times. This lets you know if there's a basement here. These are all the dynamics, the dimensions for the houses, the size of the room. And Rosie, this part right here is what I call the ooh la la. This is the selling features that'll mention if you have granite countertops, if you have anything new, she likes ooh la la, anything new or anything updated there, that would go there. This over here, another thing I want to mention is the acreage. And hopefully you guys can find that. Scroll down just a little bit, Rosie.
Like, I don't even know where that is.
Yep. So it's right, not all the way at the bottom. It's kind of like midway through to the left side of the screen. I'm at the right side. I'm sorry, the right side of the document. It says number of acres, and this one has 0.47. Big deal, you guys, because once again, I have on an appraiser's hat, not a realtor hat. And these are things that appraisers are looking at to make sure they're coming up with the right value. This tells you how many acres you have. And then this really important, what I want you to take a look at down here at the very bottom, Rosie, very important is when this closed. So it's going to tell you when it's closed, but not only that, if you look just a little bit to the side of that, it'll tell you what type of loan it was. This was a conventional, and it will also tell if the seller paid any closing costs. I think that is very important for you to know so you get an idea of what's happening in your neighborhood. Where did the competition in your home and the other comparables, did they pay closing costs or not? You don't have to pay them, but I am going to look at that always to let you know kind of what to expect. So that is that, and they get all of that. Quick little tip on this one. I did not when I was younger. When I was a newer agent, I did not print out the agent pool. Note. Please write that down. You want to print out the consumer pool, not the agent pool. And the only reason is because the agent pool will have the other agent's information. And you do not want to, in any chance, give away that information, like of another agent's contact information. Like, don't make it easy for them to have another agent to reach out to. Okay. I mean, I still do it, but I'll do it from time to time because I kind of don't care. But I would not have done it as a newer person when you're like trying to gain your confidence and all that. And it's just a good practice to not do it, period. But, sometimes we just do things. All right. So that's everything on that page. Now, they would not have the tax. That's for me. Now, what I'm going to do, Rosie, is this next page, this agent single line, this next page literally just has all the homes that have sold or that are active or pending right now in your neighborhood. If they've sold in the last 12 months or they're currently on the market pending, so you can see what your competition is today and also where your appraiser will be coming from comps. You guys, if this is a neighborhood, if you notice, all of these are from the same neighborhood. So I only did that neighborhood. It's a big neighborhood. If you're doing different areas like downtown or different things, how you figure out which ones are your agent single line, you can get further help from me or your team lead when you're in the middle of doing this. Sometimes you're using a half mile out. What I do want to preface is I do not like this to be too zoned in. We're starting kind of wide, and I'm going to walk you through why. So Rosie, these are all the homes, and you've probably seen some of these homes on the market and probably wondered if they were a comp to yours or not. And we're going to just focus on the ones that are comps because all of these are not comparables for your home. Okay, so the ones that I have found on this particular list that are comparable homes are the ones we're going to talk about. But when you're looking at these later, let me explain what these are so you can understand. And guys, notice I keep mentioning when you guys talk later. I like, my style is I don't feel like people need to make a decision on the spot with me. I'm okay if they need to think about it. And the reason they usually don't need to think about it is because I've given them that right throughout the entire thing. I was not acting as if I was assuming the sale, although I do expect you to work with me. Does that make sense? It's just my style. It is not a right or wrong way. It's just my style. And so here is this right here, just tells you what the address is. This column tells you what the price is, what it actually is listed for now, or what it's sold for. And let me back up. I'm sorry. The status here, the second column, that lets you know if it is active, which you have no active listings right now in your area, if it's pending or if it has already sold. And then jumping over here, beds, full bath, half bath, pretty self-explanatory. I want to jump over here all the way almost to the end and let you know what SFMU means. That means square footage on the main unit. So if you have a basement, which you guys do, that would not be included in that square footage. And just so you know, appraisers do not count your basement square footage. So that's why this is broken up. So we want to make sure this is just what's on their main unit. If they have a basement, it says yes. And then this total square footage is going to include the basement, and DOM just means days on the market. So when you're looking at this later on, now you just kind of know what you're looking at. And sometimes they'll stop and write some notes or whatever so they understand that. Now we're going to take from that same list, we're just going to look at the 4 comps that I felt were really most comparable to yours. Another quick side note, the reason I make this one wide, the one that has the agent single line, the reason that was wide and had so many on it is because you'll be amazed at how many times they're like, oh, well, we know our one neighbor sold. When they see that you've already got that on their list, but it didn't make it to the comp, it makes sense to them then. Is that instead of you having to go back and forth, because what you don't want to happen is them mention firing off houses around the area. Well, what about so-and-so? What about this one? And then you're like, you're like, now I feel like an idiot. Well, guess what? It's on here. It's on, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember this house. And another reason is my patience is not that great. No one ever has said Crystal's patient. I don't want you doing all that during my time. We have an hour. We need to get through it. You and your husband can look at all that stuff after I leave because it's fun. And I do want them to enjoy and explore. I just don't need to explore it with them. Does that make sense? So they can look at all the different houses like, oh yeah, that was that one. So I'll let them do it a few times. But then I'm like, all right, well, let's look at the ones that are comparables for your home. Okay. And so now we're jumping into, so it's going to be those other.
I'm sorry, I just realized this says Home Slice Realty.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's a good name, right? I want to work for them. Okay, so up here, Rosie, as I mentioned to you before, I'm just going to kind of gauge you through the same places that I showed you on your listing. These are the same you're going to find on this listing. So this is the address. If the property is sold, so it lets you know what status it's in, how many days it was on the market, the price it listed at, and the price it sold for, the bedrooms, the square footage, the dimensions, the ooh la la factor there, the acres, and then down here, remember, we're going to look at, this is a conventional buyer. So you're getting an idea of what kind of buyers are buying in your area, your neighborhood. What can you expect to see on those on your purchase agreement? Also, when this closed, and it looks like the seller paid no closing costs, so that's awesome. So I'm sorry. Which one?
The like that they paid no closing costs.
Down at the bottom.
Conventional.
That's conventional, then right to the side of it. Yes, thank you for highlighting. Yes. So hopefully everybody saw where Rosie's cursor it was at. Yes, thank you. Notice how quickly we went through this time, because once you explain it one time and you've highlighted, you don't need to go through all of that again, okay? Now, the difference is, so this is my anal. Okay, I'm not being anal. Let me explain why I do it. I want them to feel like they can easily follow me and they're not going like this. Organization is a big deal. Remember, presentation is everything, because what did I tell you guys before? It's not always what you say, it's how people feel. You want them going like this all the time. Oh, okay. Not like like right now, Rosie was kind of in distress there, right? That is not a feeling you want people to have. That's why I would highlight things. That is why, obviously, I'm doing this a little bit faster, but that is why they're in front of me and I'm pointing out as we go. I always have a pin. Because I want them to just be going like this. I want them to feel like that was not too much information. I was following along with her. So for that reason, the next thing that would be under this one are the pictures that go with this listing. It would not be the next listing, because I would tell them, now you've seen the terms of this home. Now you're going to look at we're going to look at the condition of this same home. So I would pull out the pictures for Waterloo Drive, whatever that is. And this, I sit back a little bit and I literally sit back and I push it toward them and I say, I'll let you go ahead and take a look through there. This, I do want them to look at. What do those counters look like? Is the paint all neutral? Because you guys, regardless of what my thoughts are that they should do in their home, this is money, because it's telling them this is what someone's home looked like that sold at this price just recently in your area. Does that make sense? And so I let them look at that. Now, I don't do it anymore, but something I think you should do, tip, when I was new, what I did my first 2 years on this page, I would make notes about if I felt that house was inferior to theirs or superior. And I would make little notes. Your home is inferior, and inferior doesn't sound as bad as your home sucks compared to this house, right? Your home is inferior. Your home is inferior in these things on this one. Your home is superior. This helped them understand where value was coming from. Because if you notice, there's no pictures of the memories or the fact that you did whatever, because people give value to things that appraisers don't give value to. Okay. So we have gone through that. We went through the pictures. I'm just going to fast forward, and I do that with each one. Okay. So we did that with the 4. Now, in this particular scenario with these people, with this house, there were no active listings, which is going to happen quite a bit. It didn't used to be that way. If there were active listings, I would have printed the active listings off and let them know this is your current competition. If you were to list today, this is exactly so I would do that. But they didn't have that. They were already pending and they weren't really pumped, so I didn't do that. So that's an idea that you certainly can do. We're not going to go through each one. So each one, I do that's the same. And then and you'll feel the vibe. I don't want you to feel like I just rush right through them, because I don't. I give people, because this is important for me. I very rarely have to have heated conversations and back and forth on value, because I do a very thorough job of walking them through, and they see what I see, and you know what I mean? It's usually not a lot of pulling of the teeth. Okay. So, all right, Rosie, so you've got to see the interiors of these homes and some of the stats. Now I'm just going to bring you, an appraiser, this is a good thing for you guys to know. And so, Rosie, appraisers appraise using 2 different systems, one on the condition of the home and one on the price per square footage of the home. You do agree, Rosie, that 2 houses can both be 3,000 square feet, but that doesn't mean they hold the same value if one of them has got all these updates and everything, right? Now I say yes. So we looked at the conditions. Now we're going to look at more of the numbers of the same 4 home, Rosie. Everything is these are all about the same 4 homes. So you don't have to worry about that I threw in some different houses in here. So if you look at this quick CMA, Rosie, to the right there, it's just going to let you know right there when the house sold, the address, that location of it. And then over here, it gets into those beds, the baths again, the garage, fireplace. The one thing I want to make sure you understand what SFOPT is, and that means square footage optional. So I'm just going to have you write basement above that, because that's what that means. And when I'm not here, you might forget what that meant. So that just means basement. SFMU, we talked about that before, square footage without the basement. This is what these houses sold for a price per square footage. They were listed at this price, but they sold at the next price. So if you notice here, Rosie, in this market right now, we really, your neighborhood, it's performing in some different ways. We've had houses on here that listed higher and then sold for less. We've also had the reverse happen. So this is not a slam dunk. So we want to make sure we kind of get this pricing right and kind of so you know what to expect. You guys, that again, do you see where the value is on that?
Mhm.
People think their house and they compare it to the whole market. No, we need to look at what's going on in your neighborhood, because just because everything's selling like hotcakes in majority of the area, that doesn't mean it's happening in your price point in your neighborhood, your area. You got that? So you're zooming them in so they're aware of what's going on. And I don't want you to develop lazy habits. We are in a very unique, unusual market. That is not going to be the way things stay. I'm sure it can't. So you don't want to develop bad habits and just thinking like, oh, whatever. I mean, you can listen whatever you want. You want to be able to have proof, right? And so the days on market also show, Rosie, this is a close-up of how fast things are going in your neighborhood right here. So this is all the information. And then Rosie just takes a snapshot and shows you like the averages of these things. And down at the bottom, and I always circle that really big, that's the bread and butter right there. So this shows what the average and the median sales prices are for your neighborhood. Now, to be honest with you, Rosie, based on my figures, I would not suggest we price your home anywhere near the average or the median, because your home is superior, as we discussed in looking at these homes. Your home is superior to all these houses. So we're going to really be up here at the max. And my goal is actually to have your house be the most expensive house that has sold in the history of your neighborhood. And so that's my goal. And that's exactly, honestly, what I told these people and what we did. And then I was able to explain why we're going up to the top, because their house was superior to these other homes. And so any questions so far, Rosie, on just how this is looking, these numbers, this? And I give them a moment to just kind of get their head around that. By now, they usually are very excited because they got to the number part, right? Then we want to get them very excited for the gut punch. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not a gut punch. It's not, you guys. I shouldn't even play like that. So next we're going to talk about, and usually if there's a husband involved, if there's a guy there, I usually be like, all right, Jason, this is your part. Show me the money. That's what you've been waiting on. And they'll be like, no, I'm fine. But normally that is exactly what they've been waiting on. I'm like, here's the part you've been waiting on. I'm ready to show you the money, Jason. And so let's talk about what you should walk away with at closing, okay? All right, Jason. So, and Rosie, I love how Jason has entered the conversation. So anyway, so here are three different scenarios of should you sell at these different price points and what you would walk home with. So I want to walk you through these numbers really quick, and then you can ask me any questions. The first scenario is if you sold at $285. This next number is your mortgage payoff. That is presently what you own on your home. And this is your tax proration. And I don't know if you know this or not, Rosie, but we actually pay taxes in arrearage in Indiana. And because of that, when you go to closing, there's going to be taxes that you owe. You haven't been billed for it yet, but you do owe it because you've lived in the house. Okay. And so it's not that you're behind or anything. It's just the way Indiana works. And so when you get to closing, so what I have done, I don't know the exact number of that, but what I did is I held out 13 months of taxes, because you shouldn't owe more than that. Okay. So I did 13 months. And then if you owe less, that's just extra money in your pocket. Okay. So next down here is the seller paid closing costs. And Rosie, what that is that's your title fees. In the state of Indiana, buyers get to choose the title company by law. They do have a right to do that. And we don't know who they're going to pick. So I just went with a figure that I figured would be good. It shouldn't be too much higher than that. If anything, it's going to be less, but we won't know that yet. So that's just your title fees for the title company. So you can know when you walk away, you're done with this house. Nobody can come back later and say something about you owed or there was this. That is your insurance, and that's what you're paying for. So that's not for the buyer. That's your closing costs. Okay. Under here is the listing brokerage fee. And so that is Platt's fee. And that fee right there is the 6.5% that will take care of both my fee as well as the buyer's fees. And so I don't know if you remember this or not, but you in the state of Indiana, the sellers actually paid for both the buyer and the seller side in the real estate transaction. So this fee takes care of everybody, both brokerages and both agents. It gets split out 4 different ways. So once that's done, this bottom number, that is what you get at closing. That'll be your check. I don't know that I'm on the money, but I'm usually within very, very close within maybe a couple $100 if that's what you'll get. Okay. And this is, mind you, if you don't do any closing costs. I did not factor in buyer's closing costs because from looking at the comps, none of the sellers in your area for those 4 comps paid out any closing costs. So I would think it's safe to assume that you're not going to get asked to do that. And so all this same information goes for the next scenario. If you sell at 275, you'll walk away with 52,000. If you sell at 295, you'll walk away with 71,000. Rosie, do you guys have any questions over any of these numbers or take home, or what are some thoughts you're thinking? And I'll get a different range of things sometimes. And I'll be honest with you, I almost never get pushback or questions about my fee. And
Literally, how is that?
honestly, I'm not being funny. I don't understand why people do. This is the way I was taught to do it. It's what I've always done. What I think is the reason, here's a few reasons. I believe it's because it's a natural progression. I have already showed my worth. I have already showed my work, and I've already showed them what they're taking home. There's no questions. There's no wondering. They already know, instead of having to ask, that that money is going 4 different ways. It's not all coming to me. I think it's because it overcomes a lot of objections and questions without asking. This also, the other reason I think is because I do not have these conversations piecing it out. Like, what do you charge? I charge 6%. No, that's why I don't spend a lot of time on the phone at the beginning, because you don't know me from Adam. I wait and we do everything together. It's a presentation and it's all together. And I firmly believe that all of those reasons are a collective reason why I don't get pushback. Now, that doesn't mean someone might not say, well, would you consider doing 6% or something like that? But I honestly, very rarely, and I have dropped down from 7% to 6.5% when I came to Platt. So I thought that was a nice treat I gave people.
I think one thing else that you do really well in coming from sales for 27 years is she doesn't make a big deal of it.
Yep.
It's just, that's part of it. And I think sometimes when you're selling yourself, and folks will go, it's 6.5.
Yep.
Like presenting it like it's a bad thing. And it's like, no, I'm 6.5.
Yeah. Here's the number. And sometimes, honestly, I don't even mention the percentage. I just say, here's the brokerage, here's Platt's fee that comes out, takes care of all 4. Very rarely do I say the percentage. Sometimes they'll figure it out later on. They'll like do the math and they're like, oh, she's doing 6.5%.
Yeah.
And if someone asks, and to what Natanya was sharing with you guys yesterday, I think yesterday, the client that she shadowed me on for a listing presentation, I did all this. I do the same thing every time. The seller texts me like some days, weeks later or something. She was like, I just noticed you're charging 6.5%. Is that right? Is that accurate? And my response was yes. That's all. I just text back yes. And she was like, wow, that seems kind of high. I've never heard of a realtor. I've never ran across a realtor charging 6.5%. And she didn't ask a question, so I didn't respond. And then she was like, oh, that was, then she texted again. It was like, that was odd. So I knew where she was going. And I replied back and I told her, I assure you I'm worth every dime. And her response was, I have no doubt that you are. And we moved on. Had I been scared, I would have gave up money without her asking. And that, she's a smart woman. That's what she was trying to do. She did not want to insult me, but she mentioned it because most realtors would have replied back with, why, how about 6%? She didn't ask me. Would I have done it for her at 6%? I probably would have if she would have asked. Just because of the background, blah, blah, blah. I probably would have been willing. But why if I can get my 6.5% that I know that I'm worth? Right? So it's not that I never negotiate, but that is my normal pricing. And like she said, it's not making a big deal out of it. It's just like you have to pay the title, you got to pay your taxes, you got to pay me. This is, so does that make sense?
It's really helpful, especially like putting it right up next to like, this is how much you're gonna make.
Yes.
And I like that you're saying this is Platts brokerage fee, and that you're saying it's split 4 ways. You're not like,
Yeah.
and this is my commission.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
Because at the end of the day, it is. Because guess who that check is going to be made out to? Not Crystal White, Platt. And so, it is what it is. I just honestly wouldn't make a big deal of it, and that is one of the reasons I need to have a full on. I don't like giving pieces of my presentation here and there, a little bit about trying to explain why I charge this amount and then, well, I do this and I do marketing. You see what I'm saying? Like give me 1 hour and we can sit down and walk through this. Does that make sense? So hopefully that is helpful for you guys. On this, our little doggy stories got in there. I want to go through the seller checklist. You're on the buyer one, Rosie. I don't know that you have, unless Gigi has sent it back over. She may have not sent it yet. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. Is that the new one? Because she updated. Oh, then that's it. Okay, so I'm gonna just walk you through, like you guys can read. There's nothing, I don't need to go through and read this. I'm not gonna do that to you. I want to first of all confess, I do not use this anymore. And after this class, after going through preparing for yesterday, I will be using this now because I'm skipping steps that I used to do as a newer agent that I don't like the fact that I'm skipping those steps now. And so I will be back to using this, putting this on. So that would look like for me is my little sheet that I print off with the tax assessor sheet or whatever. I would just staple this on the front, put the client's name on it and use that. So sending the referring party a note or gift. Gift as in, I used to send out a $5 Starbucks gift card. If someone referred this person to me, they don't need to close just for them doing that. I don't do that anymore. I stopped doing that a while back. I have client appreciation events and they get invited just for being a referrer. But here nor there, I just want to say the power of a thank you. You guys, you don't always have to throw money at stuff. Sending an actual thank you card. You guys can get Platt stationery, Platt, the card. Yeah, Platt cards. So that's already ready. And all you do is you customize it, whether it's for someone's birthday, a thank you, whatever, because it's generic and you can just make it be whatever you want and then pop it in the mail. And you don't even have to put a gift in there. So it's totally up to you, but just saying thank you is a big deal, you guys, so that you can teach them to keep doing that, keep sending you referrals, okay? The thinking of selling email, we talked about that. All of these things we kind of talked about. There's a few things on here that we hadn't done, like we didn't discuss because it wasn't part of that, but checking for the client on social media, sending them a friend request, that's not creepy. It's totally fine. Then when you go to close, you can always already have them as a friend and tag them.
Super
When-
helpful for
yeah.
someone like me that's not.
Yeah, you can always go in and tag them. And then you're also engaging with them on social media for now and forever. And so that they're seeing you, they're seeing your stuff, you guys. So really, really key thing to do. The actual listing, the home, the documents, all of that, this just kind of breaks down like, did I do this? Did I do that? This is important to me. I think important for you guys when you're trying to schedule, when someone says, oh yeah, you meet with them today and they're like, yeah, we like to list our home Monday. You're excited. You're like, heck yeah. Hold up, the brakes. Now you know I need to do all these things, and how much time do I need? And I probably am not going to list that on Monday. Does that make sense? And so this is just paperwork that you want to have done at the listing. You could do it. It doesn't matter when you do it. Like, you don't have to do it at the appointment, but these are things in Dotloop that need to be done before your listing goes live. Okay. Any questions on the checklist or even anything at all on the whole thing? I love, we get to hear our little doggy.
Is there, I know a lot of agents like list on a Thursday, you know.
Yeah.
On Sunday, like.
I honestly, I did not mention that on purpose, just because I normally would tell people I list on Thursdays. It was my listing day. So I don't care when you're wanting to do things, and people usually understand it. I'm like, so here's the deal. Once we decide they're going to list with me, okay, my listing day is Thursday. So we want to make sure we have pictures done on Monday or Tuesday at the very latest. Like, we schedule that. But after seeing Rob Measel's comment that he put in Facebook, I was like, I'm really, because he made a good point. He's like, I've never understood why agents do that and make themselves have to work on the weekend. And I'm like, I don't like to work on the weekend if I don't have to. I'm changing that real quick.
Right.
So I really am, I haven't thought it through just yet, but I do know my next listing will not be on a Thursday. It will more than likely be like on a Tuesday. To give me time to do some stuff. So now I will need to backtrack from that day with photographer. When would they need to have blah, 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 blah. But it will not be on Thursdays.
But it also,
It
gives
is.
you stand out a little bit, because
Yeah.
so many people do it on Thursday. A new listing
Yeah.
on Tuesday kind of gives your buyers
And I have, it made sense when I was doing it, because that is one of the busier days. The weekends, people are going out looking at houses, but clients will go out and look at houses whenever. And so be aware of the market, know why you're doing things. And then when you need to shift, when the market shifts, you can shift too. But right now, I don't need to do that. When I started doing that, yeah, it made a lot of sense. But right now, people will go look at houses whenever the heck you'll let them go look at them. So yes, any other question, comment? Drew, it looks like you were going to ask something before Rosie did.
I was thinking, but no, yeah, it's just slipped my mind.
Okay. Do you guys feel like, it's a lot of information?
It was great.
No, it feels like the right information, not too much.
Oh,
Yeah, it's very
okay.
helpful to keep me organized. Like, I'm picturing a file for each client with all the information right there, this on the front page and highlighted. It's
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah. The thing is, whatever you need to do that makes you feel confident in front of your clients and makes you feel prepared. If it's whatever. So that's what's important, because it's all about how it makes you feel, because that's going to determine how well you get paid.
I think it's helpful. I'm filtering all this through having just sold our home in Lafayette.
Yeah.
And so our realtor did a really good job of helping bring people to her in Lafayette. But leading up to this appointment, I had very different thoughts of what we could get out of the home from what they were presenting.
Yeah.
And so I just did my own work of comps and, all that kind of thing. And just like, I just feel like and she, by this appointment, she was there and was great. And, but yes, I just think this is just helpful, because obviously I was going into real estate. And so I was a little more like,
involved.
but there are going to be clients like that who are kind of saying, like, no, I can figure this out. And you're making it too low. And so to have all the facts, and here's the argument, to then at the end say, this is what I think.
Yeah.
Is really helpful.
Yeah. And my last little nugget on this is, just trust me when I say I made sure years ago that every personality style was appealing to every personality style. DISC. Like, I kept that in mind with the information what it was, and that is why I don't do full CMAs, because that is overwhelming for me. Like, it makes me feel like, you know, I wouldn't want somebody to present that to me at all. Not that it's wrong or I wouldn't hire them. It's just, I don't like the way it makes me feel, so I'm not going to present myself as well as I would, because I don't feel good about it. So,
I just wanted to say that I sent the 6 questions to my neighbor. And she got back to me last night, and one of the things she said is what she was looking for out of a realtor is somebody that was honest, informative, and that could lead her through the process by giving her good feedback that made her feel informed. And I think that's what this does in a really, really nice format. So thank you.
yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm going to share Natanya's quick tidbit on that. You all by now have heard me, except for CD. I was going to call him DC. Except for CD, you all have heard me talking about sending out those postcards, sending out, letting people know you're in business, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. And then there's the following up on them, especially if you're an independent new agent. We worked a little bit more on that. So Natanya really wants to be in her neighborhood, as all of us should want to be, like a dominant force in our neighborhood. And she sent out, she sent some of her neighbors the postcard, and one of her neighbors is getting ready to sell, and Natanya had no idea. And so she called Natanya, and not only did she reach out, talk to her, she actually kept Natanya's postcard. So she had all of her information. So, which is great. She's meeting with her for listing appointment, but could you imagine how Natanya would have felt to get up one morning and look down the street and see another realtor's sign, because Natanya didn't think, you know, well, I don't want to bother people, or, I mean, we don't have that kind of relationship, because she just didn't send out those postcards to every person who knows her, who knows who she is. They know her, she knows them, and they would smile at each other if they passed each other on the street. That is the only requirement. If anything other than that, you're thinking way too hard. So congrats on that, because she's going to get a brand new wonderful listing where she wants one at because of that. So be encouraged, you guys, do it. I don't get to send out brand new postcards announcing I'm a new agent. Guess what? Because I'm not. Like, you missed that boat, and I'm not trying to be funny, but you only get to be brand new and have a reason to explore all that to everybody at one time. So take advantage of it. You guys were awesome. Bye, my Zoomers.